The archaeologist thought she was looking at one person. A skeleton lay on its side, in a fetal position, in a Roman cemetery in Belgium. A bone pin rested near the skull, and 3 badger bones lay beside it. Standard burial. Box it up, move on. It sat in storage for nearly 50 years. Then someone tested the bones. The skull came from the 3rd century. The ribs came from the Stone Age. The feet belonged to at least 5 different adults. And the whole thing had been arranged in perfect anatomical order by someone who knew exactly what a human body was supposed to look like. That is number 2 on this list. In most tombs, the skeleton is the answer. In these 5, the skeleton is the question. Number 5. The Lovers of Valdaro. On February 11, 2007, 3 days before Valentine's Day, archaeologist Elena Maria Minotti was excavating a Neolithic burial site in the village of Valdaro near Mantua in northern Italy. What she found stopped her team in their tracks. 2 skeletons, 1 male and 1 female, both approximately 20 years old and both around 5 feet 2 inches tall, were lying face to face with their arms and legs intertwined. They had been in that position for roughly 6,000 years. Double burials were extremely rare during the Neolithic period. This was the only one found among 30 graves at the site. It is the only known Neolithic double burial in all of northern Italy. The male skeleton had a flint arrowhead near his neck. The female had a long flint blade along her thigh and 2 flint knives under her pelvis. No evidence of violent death was found on either body, so the objects were most likely grave goods, not weapons used against them. No Neolithic settlement has ever been found in Valdaro. The area was marshland, crisscrossed by rivers in antiquity. Nobody knows where these 2 people lived. Nobody knows how they died. And nobody knows why they were buried together in a position that no other Neolithic grave in the region has ever replicated. Minotti made a decision that would define the discovery. She refused to separate the skeletons for individual analysis. Instead, her team lifted the entire block of earth containing both bodies and shipped it intact to a laboratory. The Lovers of Valdaro are now displayed together at the Archaeological Museum of Mantua. They have never been apart. One more detail. Mantua is the same city where Shakespeare exiled Romeo after he kills Tybalt. The discovery of 2 young lovers in an eternal embrace near the setting of history's most famous love tragedy 3 days before Valentine's Day was pure coincidence, or at least nobody can prove otherwise. Number 4. The vampire burials of Eastern Europe. Across Bulgaria, Poland, the Czech Republic, Greece, and Italy, archaeologists have uncovered over 100 skeletons buried in ways designed to prevent the dead from rising. Iron rods driven through the chest, heads removed and placed between the legs, legs severed and laid beside the body, heavy stones piled on the torso, scythes positioned across the throat so that if the corpse sat up, the blade would take its head. In some graves, poppy seeds were scattered over the body because folklore held that vampires were obsessed with counting and would be trapped in the grave, compelled to count every seed before they could leave. These are not isolated incidents. This was a continent-wide practice that lasted from the 13th century through the early 20th century. In rural Bulgarian communities, anti-vampire burials were still being performed as recently as the 1900s. In 2014, archaeologist Nikolai Ovcharov, nicknamed Bulgaria's Indiana Jones, excavated a 13th century skeleton at Pommeroeul, an ancient Thracian site in southern Bulgaria. The man had been in his 40s when he died. A heavy iron plowshare had been hammered through his chest, and his left leg had been removed and placed beside the body. In 2022 in Pień, Poland, a 17th century woman was found buried with a padlock around her toe and a sickle laid across her throat. If she rose, the blade would kill her again. The people who buried these bodies were not performing rituals for entertainment. They were terrified. Decomposition produces gases that can cause a body to bloat, shift position, and appear to move inside a coffin. Blood-like purge fluid can leak from the mouth and nose, creating the appearance that the corpse has been feeding. In communities without any understanding of decomposition chemistry, these natural processes would have looked exactly like a dead person coming back to life. The vampire was never real. But the fear was. And the fear was strong enough to drive people to mutilate their own dead for 700 years. Number 3. The Spiral of Tlalpan. In 2018, archaeologists from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History were excavating beneath the Pontifical University of Mexico in southern Mexico City when they found something no one had ever seen before. 10 skeletons were arranged in a deliberate spiral, roughly 6.5 feet in diameter, with their arms interlocked. The skulls faced multiple directions. The bodies fanned outward from the center, resembling the spiral of a galaxy. The bones belonged to men, women, a toddler, and a 1-month-old infant. The burial dates to approximately 2,400 years ago, during the pre-classic period of Mesoamerican civilization. This predates both the Aztec Empire and Teotihuacan. The ancient village of Tlalpan, associated with the burial, sat near the shore of the now-vanished Lake Xochimilco and had existed for roughly 500 years. INAH called it the most peculiar finding since excavations began at the site in 2006. It is the largest number of individuals ever found in a single burial from this period anywhere in the region. Several of the skeletons showed signs of intentional cranial deformation and deliberate tooth filing, practices later associated with Aztec and Maya elites, but clearly in use centuries before either civilization rose to power. Lead archaeologist Jimena Rivera Escamilla proposed that the spiral may represent the stages of life, progressing from the infant at the center to the older adults at the edges. The bodies appear to have been buried simultaneously in a single ritual event. Whether these people died naturally or were killed for the ceremony remains unknown. No other spiral burial of this type has ever been found in Mesoamerica or anywhere else in the world. The arrangement is unique in the entire archaeological record. Number 2. The Frankenstein skeleton of Pommeroeul. In the 1970s, archaeologists excavated a Gallo-Roman cemetery at Pommeroeul, near Belgium's border with France. They found 77 burials. 76 contained cremated remains, which was standard Roman practice. 1 did not. Grave 26 held a complete skeleton lying on its right side in a fetal position, which was unusual for the Roman period. A Roman bone pin was found near the skull. 3 badger bones sat nearby. The remains were catalogued, boxed, and stored in a collection for nearly 50 years. Then Barbara Veselka, an archaeologist at Vrije Universiteit Brussels, decided to take a closer look. Radiocarbon dating revealed something that should not have been possible. The skull dated to the Roman period, the 2nd or 3rd century AD, but the body below the skull dated to the Neolithic period, 4,500 to 2,500 BC. The skeleton was not one person. It was not even 2. Further analysis showed that grave 26 contained bones from at least 5 adults and 2 children, spanning thousands of years. 5 right first metatarsals were found. A single person has only 1. Someone had taken bones from multiple people across multiple millennia and arranged them into the shape of a complete human being. The Neolithic body parts were positioned in correct anatomical order. The Roman skull was placed exactly where a skull should be. Whoever assembled this skeleton knew what a human body was supposed to look like and built one from parts. The study published in Antiquity in 2024 proposed two explanations. Either the Romans accidentally disturbed a Neolithic burial and repaired it by adding a skull, possibly out of fear that the disturbed dead would return to haunt them. Or the Romans deliberately collected ancient bones and assembled them into a ritual installation to forge a connection with the land's prehistoric inhabitants. The adjacent burial, Grave 25, contained cremated remains with no skull fragments and a lower-than-average ash weight. It also contained Neolithic flint artifacts. The two graves may have exchanged parts with each other across a gap of several thousand years. No one knows who did this or why, but someone in the Roman era spent considerable time and effort building a human being out of bones that were already ancient. Number 1. The Sunghir children. 34,000 years ago, during a brief warm spell between ice ages, a community of hunter-gatherers living near what is now the city of Vladimir, roughly 200 kilometers east of Moscow, buried two children head-to-head in a long, narrow grave. The children were approximately 10 and 12 years old. Both had physical disabilities. The younger child had short, bowed thigh bones. The older child showed signs of being bedridden, with dental enamel indicating repeated periods of extreme stress. His teeth had no wear, suggesting he could not chew food, and was likely fed by others throughout his life. They were buried with more treasure than any other person at the site. More than 10,000 mammoth ivory beads, each one estimated to have taken roughly an hour to carve, thread, and polish. More than 20 armbands, roughly 300 pierced fox teeth arranged into headdresses. 16 mammoth ivory spears, some over 2 meters long, straightened from curved tusks using sustained heat and pressure. Carved artwork, deer antlers, and 2 human calf bones from another individual laid across the children's chests. 10,000 beads at 1 hour each. That is 5 years of continuous work for a single person, or the combined effort of an entire community. A 40-year-old man was buried nearby. He was healthy. He would have been an active hunter and a full contributor to the group. His grave contained roughly 3,000 beads, 12 fox canines, 25 armbands, and a stone pendant, a fraction of what the children received. In 2017, DNA analysis revealed something else that did not fit. None of the individuals buried at Sunghir were closely related. The two children were not siblings. The adult was not their father. Yet genetically, all the individuals at the site were closer to each other than to any other known population. They were a community, not a family. Eric Trinkhaus, professor of anthropology at Washington University in St. Louis and co-lead researcher on a 2018 reanalysis, said the finding shows that even this early in the Upper Paleolithic, human social behavior was far more diverse and complex than anyone had projected for hunter-gatherers of this period, and it was reflected in their treatment of the dead. These were children who could not hunt, could not fight, could not feed themselves. And their community, living on the edge of survival during an ice age, chose to give them the most elaborate burial in the archaeological record, not out of obligation, not out of practicality, out of something that had no survival value at all. So what connects all 5 of these burials? 2 lovers held each other for 6,000 years. A continent mutilated its dead for 7 centuries because it was afraid of what the dead might become. 10 people were arranged in a spiral that nobody has ever explained. A skeleton was assembled from the bones of strangers who lived millennia apart, and 2 disabled children received the richest grave of the entire Ice Age. None of it makes practical sense. All of it is unmistakably human. The people who created these burials were not primitive. They were complex, emotional, and often deeply strange. And the dead, it turns out, still have things to tell us about the living. If this changed how you think about the ancient world, subscribe. I cover archaeology, lost history, and the stories buried beneath the places nobody thought to look. Every week. The next video on screen goes deeper. Click it now.